Rubric Academy, and several of the participants are here to share their experiences and talk about that. This session is being streamed live via the Canvas community, so we have a potential audience of 150,000 people who will be joining us, and we will be recording it as well. I will be monitoring the online chat and be able to hopefully contribute questions and ideas from our online audience. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today with our awesome online academic.
Stand behind it.
Okay, I have some. So thank you very much for joining us today with our awesome OEI Rubric Academy Trailblazer. Let me talk to you a little bit about what we did last semester. All of the panel members here have lots of experience going through their classes and trying to align their classes with the OEI rubric. So we'll be sharing our challenges, our feedback, and we will try to do it very collaboratively. So we want your input, you have some tips and tricks, please share with us. The other slide, yeah. Yes, and then one more. Yeah. So let me quickly talk about myself. I'm Dipali Buch, and I been in Los Angeles district for since 90s. I've taught at all Los Angeles Community College campuses and centers and everywhere. Also taught with different LMSs. Also one of the poker, there's a program online education, the reviewer, course reviewer. One of the first cohort with Marsha Reski and other colleagues from our district in 2014, and this rubric that we are going to talk, we have gone through a lot of changes throughout the journey, and I'm also very active with different activities, college-wide and elsewhere in community. There's another slide, yeah. So right now we are thinking where our classes would be. So this is a slide would talk about where our classes would stand before today, and we can achieve innovating our courses. I think if we bring our ideas together, we share our feedback together, we build a community, and we can really enhance our classes and courses, and we keep in panel year have gone through a lot of rigorous training and a lot of fun and challenges. So we have they will share with us, and please share your input because we want to know, we want to do some things together, okay, so that we can build our classes, and especially students are the reason that we are here. And we want to make sure that the main goal is quality online teaching and keeping equity, humanizing all the aspects at the community college level. And as an educator, we want to do our best and keep learning more. So let me talk about, as Greg mentioned, thank you, Greg, for hosting, and Michael, that we want to go over logistics. This is a webcast. We have about 45 minutes being recorded, and each presenter will have about 3 minutes. We'll open up for Q&A. If you get any questions, please wait until presenter is done with their presentation, and then we'll open up for questions. And if you have something to share, please do share, because we are looking for your input. And constructive feedback, especially for OEI and Canvas. Okay, we are going to collect that also. We'll be passing you OEI rubric, and you may know about OEI Rubric and also have the post notes, so please feel free to write or email us, okay? Yes. Okay, so before that, I would like you to introduce yourself from the audience, really quick. Yes, really quick, yeah.
Hi, I'm Trevor Thomas from Lake Tahoe Community College.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Autumn Bell. I'm Chief Professional Development Officer with the Online Education Initiative.
Welcome, Autumn. Yes. Yeah.
I'm Sylvia. I'm a totally loud instruction designer at Coastline Community College, also a poker.
Wonderful. Welcome. Welcome to the poker.
Good morning. I'm Rosa Linda Salazar with Sacramento City College, English department.
Welcome, Rosalita.
Amanda Paskey, Anthropology, Semester College.
Welcome, Amanda.
Cassie Hart, UC Davis.
Welcome, Casey.
I work for Distance Education Virtual Education Center, and I'm part of the team Innovate, and I'm reporting from here.
Wonderful. Welcome, Tatiana. Welcome. Yes.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Logan Murray. I work with the Online Education Initiative.
Welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Buchansky-Brock, and starting August 28th, I will be the new faculty mentor for digital innovation at ONE and the OEI.
Yay, great. Congratulations. Welcome, Michelle. Yes.
Good morning, my name is Mike Day. I'm a Director of IT Production Services here for District Office of Reeves.
Welcome. Welcome.
Nicole Welch, American River College, adjunct faculty management.
Welcome. Okay, so I'll hand over to our first presenter. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And I know I heard from a lot of folks out there, since this is a recorded session, so everybody want to take advantage of recording, and they are watching all over from hello Folsom Lake College, hello ARC, hello CRC, and hello American River College, and everyone out there. Thank you very much, whoever is watching. So Betty is right. So first presenter, we have Betty Chen. So Betty, here you go. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Betty Chan, and I teach here at American River College. I am with the Behavioral Social Sciences Department, and I teach political science. So we actually don't have a whole lot of time for each presenter. That means that I'm not able to show you visually what I'm about to explain to you. So if you do want to see anything visually, come see me after the workshop, or we can share information and I can show you at another time. What I'm going to do is address one particular, okay, before I go there, I've been trained in OTI and OEI here at American River College, and it's been very helpful in terms of being an online instructor, an effective online instructor. Okay. So what I'll focus on is this particular rubric. I'm just curious, how many people here have used the OEI rubric? Okay. And how many of you are using Canvas right now to teach? Okay. All right, so this is part of the OEI rubric. It's A9 course instructions. And in order for it to be exchange ready, it says, in the rubric, I'll just read it. Course design includes instructions for learners to work with content in meaningful ways. And if you want it to be exemplary, then one way to do that is to embed your course instructions with the particular content or activity. And so what I've done is I use Microsoft Sway for my lectures. And in Sway, you can embed videos. And when you embed the videos, you can actually write questions next to the videos. Let the students know these questions will be on the exam, so they take it seriously, right? And then with the videos, when it's a part of the embedded lecture, it looks small, but what they can do is they can just click on it, and it goes to the full-size screen. Okay, so that's what I've done with that. The other thing I do is that since the videos are embedded in the lecture. I also, in pages, in my content pages in Canvas, I also embed the videos there in case the students don't want to go through the lecture again. They can just go to the content page and look at the video to review for an exam. Okay. Can you click to the next one, Joe? Thank you. Okay, the second aspect of the rubric I want to cover is assessment instructions. And this is when we write instructions online or in face-to-face classes, we want to be as precise and clear as possible. In order for it to go to the exemplary level, what's important is to, perhaps for the discussion board, give examples of how you want the discussion or the answers to go. So besides telling students, okay, the post or the reply is a maximum of 120 words, be sure to use proper capitalization, grammar, all of that. You have the discussion rubric that you already use. In addition to that, add on examples of how you want the post to look and how you want the reply to look. And I found that to be helpful for students. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, good morning. Questions for Betty?
Do you have any questions for a minute? From Betty's wonderful presentation. All right. Thank you.
I'm sure they'll think of some. Okay, my name is Abby Feely, and I teach here in the history department at American River College. And I think many of us who teach online can attest that the process of taking a regular class and moving it online challenges you to think more deeply about your teaching and your pedagogy, and in a way that will benefit all of your students. And I can again say that after working with the rubric this past year, that the process of moving your online class closer to the rubric, again, is an opportunity to think more deeply about your teaching in a way that benefits all your students. And so I wanted just to give you one example of how that has worked out for me in my classes. And it's connected to section C of the rubric, which is about assessment. And the first element, C1, is about authenticity. And the exemplary element that we're shooting for, we all want to be exemplary, right? It says assessments are designed to mimic authentic environments for transfer. Assessments are designed to mimic authentic environments for transfer. What does that mean? What are authentic assessments? What are authentic environments? I really had to think about that deeply. For some disciplines, I think that might be more obvious. If you're in business, you might ask your students to create a business plan, right? Something they might do in the real world. But I teach history, and so we might, for example, ask our students to write an essay about the causes of the Civil War. Is that an authentic assessment? Now, obviously, there's writing involved, and that's important. There's critical thinking involved, and that's important. Those are real-world skills. But I began thinking, what are even more authentic assessments? What are even more authentic environments in history? And in order to answer that question, I had to think deeply about what are the core competencies of my discipline, and why do they matter in the 21st century? All right, so what are the core competencies of history? Why do they matter in the 21st century? And I began thinking about our lives in 2017, right? And we are surrounded by Twitter sound bites and social media that's often, ruled by hyperbole and sensationalism. And we go online and we find competing narratives and sometimes even fake news, right? And in that context, what we do in history is actually essential for students' lives in the 21st century. Because what we do as historians is we learn to have a sensitivity to complexity. We learn to have a long-term perspective and to evaluate critically sources and narratives. So what I needed to do was to be more overt in articulating for my students the historical thinking skills with the activities that we're doing. So I just want to share with you two quick examples of this. There, we'll be talking about sound bites and evaluating sources. All right, you can actually go to the next one here. So I have an assignment where my students do a Google search on Mary Ellen Pleasant. She's a somewhat enigmatic and controversial historical figure. And we compare what we find in our Google search with what we know about her. And the sources are tricky, and the narratives are tricky. And so my students have to think more carefully about what they're finding, especially the image search. The image that shows up on her in a Google search is not a verifiable photo of her. It just gets passed around the internet. So that opens up all kinds of great discussions about sources. I have another activity where my students have to evaluate some historical websites, and they have to critique for credibility and reliability and who's the author, how current is the site. And students tell me how much they love this assignment, and it's because they know these are the exact skills that they need in the 21st century, and we're using our historical skills to do that. So that's the beauty of an authentic assessment. So I just want to share that with you to encourage you to think about the rubric and some of the ways that it will have benefits not just for your online students but for all of your students as it encourages you to think deeper about your pedagogy.
Do you have any questions? Yes.
So how much did you decide to teach students about finding reliable sources as opposed to maybe that's taught in other disciplines, English and psychology? Did it take up more time in your discipline to teach them that, and did it take away from the other subjects that you were trying to cover?
Yeah, and it's always hard because in history, you know, we're not teaching writing, but we expect writing, right? We need students to have these kinds of skills, but it takes away from something in order to teach it. Some of them, I found that the online environment is great for that because you, in some ways, you're not taking up lecture time to do these activities because it's incorporated into kind of a more diversified teaching approach. The assignment, I have some new ones that I'm going to be trying out this fall, and luckily we actually have kind of some freedom where we can try out some new activities. I kind of take some time away from other elements of the course. So it is a balancing act, kind of squeezing that in, but I think it's really important, and it's the kind of developing these activities really get students excited, I think, about what they're doing. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, those were a lot of good points right there, and I'm going to steal some of your presentation just to make mine a little easier. My name is Gruber, and I'm an adjunct professor here at American River and Chabot College, and I've taught a number of other schools, of other community colleges and state universities in California. And I'm really trying to balance this the shift to the online atmosphere with a sort of a preference for, you know, good old-fashioned paper, because that's always been, you know, my pleasure just to sit down with reading. The reason I became a teacher was to, you know, talk about literature, talk about reading, and I, you know, appreciated that the lack of technology in that discipline. But I had to be realistic about the future of teaching and move into the tech world. So the OEI Rubric Academy was, I think, a great opportunity for me to get to do that and talk with some really awesome people about how they, you know, managed to bridge that gap, or, you know, have been doing it for a long time. So I really benefit a lot from having this experience, but I'm still up against some of the pitfalls of online teaching from an English course. So as an English instructor, a lot of what we do in the classroom has to deal with thinking critically and engaging in conversation and you know, using critical thinking skills and critical reasoning to help discover, you know, structures for an essay or argumentation or approaches to the writing process. And for me, moving over to the online environment was it scared me because I felt like I wasn't going to be able to facilitate that conversation as much. One of the things that I had, one of the concerns I had to do with authentic assessment. So I'll kind of, you know, I'll rely on Abigail's points and just talk mostly about facilitating discussions in the classroom. I think you could probably go off there. That's my beautiful family. But, well, for example, this summer I taught an online class on, you know, critical thinking and literature. We read 4 books that were, I think, very contemporary in their content and would require a lot of discussion, and I was concerned about how that discussion would go online, because a lot of times you get online discussions where someone shows up, they post basically a summary of what they read. If the rubric asks them to reply to other people, they say, hey, I liked what you said, hey, I liked what you said, give me my points, please. And that is different than the classroom, because in the classroom, you're accountable to each other, you hear what other people say, whether you like it or not, you're learning how to be an effective communicator, and then you're also gaining material for your writing, for the writing. And so for me, the challenge was, how am I gonna get these discussions online to be like the classroom that I appreciate? And it was hard. At first, started basically, dominating the course with discussions, having a discussion for 3 days a week. And it was overwhelming for the students, I think. I got a lot of comments, a lot of the original, here's what I read, here's what I liked, let me respond to one other person, but I could tell everybody was rushed. And by the end of the course, what I realized is that, if you open up the discussions for a longer period of time, allowed for the discussions to expand and have students work with each other in the discussions, more room for that, to sort of de-emphasize the get it done before your grade comes and emphasize this is an online classroom, this is our place to talk, that it actually ended up being a lot better, because I would have students that had a discussion that you might get in class through a small group discussion, but we're still limited for time. You have 45 minutes maybe to have this discussion. Online, I was able to see people really talk about issues in the literature. And we read some touchy subjects. We read Claudia Rankine's Citizen and Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, and they raised some issues for students that they were uncomfortable talking about, and that it was also they weren't familiar with. And so these discussions lasted a lot longer, which was a revelation to me that online teaching, had much more provenance for the English classroom in that situation. And so what I saw was a lot of people helping each other out, talking about issues, coming back and changing things they had said earlier, because it was all documented there in their discussion. And it kind of blew my mind in terms of what I could do in the classroom with the discussion using online teaching, which was tough for me, as I mentioned earlier, because I really liked the idea of, you go home, read the book, and come to class and let's talk about it. But after going through the Rubric Academy and getting to see what some of the other people do for facilitating discussions, I feel like I've got a lot more to work with, and hopefully other people can see that too. So I'm going to turn over the mic now to Joe.
Corey. Do we have any questions? Have any questions for Corey, for special English? It's a second language, right? Yes. Thank you, Corey.
All right. So my name is Joe Rust, and I'm a counselor here. I am the transfer director, and then I also teach 2 college or human career development courses. One is College Success, and then the other one is Specific Learning Strategies, which is like College Success, but it has more of a focus on disabilities for students with learning disabilities. Because before I was a full-time counselor, I was adjunct here for 9 years as a DSPS counselor and a learning disability specialist. So that's kind of my background. I kind of just summarized my experience. I felt like the rubric to me was a great tool to guide me, ensuring my course was clear, organized, and accessible. I kind of feel like that's what the rubric in a nutshell is doing, is making sure things are clear, making sure the students can get to them, and that they can understand them. And I felt like from my background of DSPS, a lot of these things were always kind of on my mind, or when you talk with other instructors, it wasn't always on their mind. And so it kind of just, now it's in writing, and it kind of makes you feel good, like I was thinking the right things or things that were helpful. And even though you know these things, it's still nice to have a checklist, because you can easily forget things. And so I view the rubric as kind of a checklist for me. And then my classes are hybrid, and I also teach in class. And I've never really thought about teaching my class fully online, because I enjoy person to person. And I always was kind of a little bit fearful in the sense that my population, almost all my class are students with disabilities. And so it was like, could I pull that off? And I think now this tool, I think there's a lot of new features where I think that although challenging, I think that it is possible now, and I think that the rubric is a great tool in helping me when I am looking at potentially trying to make a fully online class. So some of the things that I guess recommendations are things that were helpful to me that I figured out. First, start like now if you haven't already started, because I think I had no summary because I just worked on Canvas stuff. Especially if you're very like particular, like I'm very particular about things. So like I'll spend like 2 hours picking out like one picture. And so if you're one of those type of people, you should start early. Part of the beginning with Canvas, at least with, because I feel like a big portion is organization. And I felt I was struggling a little bit in the beginning with Canvas because, you know, the modules wasn't really fitting with how I like to do things. So I kind of went away from the modules a little bit and went more of a page style. And so if you're struggling with the module part of Canvas, I think it's just know that there's, I think, a different way. I mean, you can still be successful in Canvas if it helps you with your organizational style. Because I really feel like organization is a very big deal for me, at least with my student population, even though I think organization is a universal thing. It's a universal design. And I think anyone's course should be very well organized for a student to do well. The other thing is I put in navigation buttons. So, you know, you have the sidebar, but I always felt like I added a button at the bottom of every page so they could always easily get back to the previous page. Or I broke, like, for example, my syllabus, I broke off because I felt like in the modules, after like 5 things, it's no longer chunking, right? It's like a list. And so I would break the syllabus off of the modules, and then there'd be the additional broken down sections. And within those sections, I would add the next and back buttons, as well as a button to take them back to the syllabus. So they could still, it was like going through a module, but they weren't in the module. So when they go to the module, it's like not visually overwhelming, right? So that's what I do with the navigation buttons. Even like if on assignments, at the bottom, there's a button that says assignments. We'll take them back to the assignments page so they can see the assignments page in the home page so they can always navigate more easily, because I feel like that's important. I felt like the Canvas help number was awesome because they're there like anytime you need them and you get a real person. And so our district, at least our district, has paid for that service right now, and I thought it was a great service because sometimes even starting out new, even our people in the IT center don't always know the answer, and so it's nice to have Canvas help, at least, especially initially. Another tool that I felt was great, especially for the accessibility piece, I've known about it for a long time. I use it when I create websites. I was having trouble, though, using it in Canvas because it wouldn't let me get past the login page. But then I found out you could use the Chrome add-in or plugin, and it did work with the pages. And this has really been really helpful because, again, I know these things, but sometimes when you're doing things in Canvas, like you go to the next tab, it keeps the header and it doesn't go to paragraph. And so even though that blank is it'll say header, but you don't want it to be a header. So when you run the tool, it'll show you, oh, you have a header there with no content, right? And you're like, oh. So then I can go back and fix those things. Or like in our default template, they had orange text, and it was saying the contrast wasn't strong enough. And so, because not all the Canvas colors are accessible. And so things like that, because I'm a person that likes to tinker, and if you're someone who's going to tinker, you should make sure that when you tinker, you don't mess things up. And so this tool helps me from messing things up. The other thing I felt good was I didn't know for the longest time that if you hit Control-K, it allows you more options when you're linking. And so for the longest time, when you hit the links icon at the top, it just gives you where to put the link. And if you wanted the little icon to show, but if you hit Control-K, then you can actually get the option of putting it into a new window. And again, when you're talking about organization, sometimes it's easier to help guide students by opening in new windows than so they can just quickly close things and stay on the same page and not get lost.
I just want to remind, I think Greg just mentioned about the time.
Am I over?
So,
oh, sorry.
Yeah, so 15 minutes left.
And I'll be quiet.
For
Rubrics
all
are
the
great,
panelists. Yeah,
simple and
thank
clean.
you so much. Yeah, I just want to remind.
Thanks, Joe.
Please feel free to, talk to Joe. He has tremendous experience in accessibility and other places. So please, do you have any quick question for Joe? We can take one question. No? Okay, thank you, Joe. And Michael had such a wonderful idea about the Innovate. Let's do a quick exercise about Innovate. Yeah,
Dipali had asked me to
yes.
do a little activity with you.
Thank you.
So if you are here, set aside whatever you've got on your laps. If you've got a computer, a notebook, those of you that are watching at home, push back from your computers a little bit. And what I want you to do is I want you to rub your hands, both hands, on your pant leg. At the count of 3, please clap your hands together and fold them in your lap, okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Clap your hands together, fold them in your lap. Okay. Now look down at your hands. Most of you folded your hands with one thumb on top of another, right? Some of you put your right thumb on top, some of you put your left thumb on top. Some of you may have put your thumbs next to each other. So take a look around, see what the people around you did. Now, research says that the people with the right thumb on top, those are the sexy people. The sexy people. With the left thumb on top, those are the sneaky people. Oh. If you put your thumbs next to each other, those are the ones we really worry about because they're a little bit of both, right? I'm kidding. The research doesn't actually say that, but we're going to do this activity one more time. Okay, this time you're going to rub your hands on your pant leg, and when I tell you to clap, I want you to put the other thumb on top. So if you folded your right thumb on top the first time, this time put your left thumb on top. If you put them next to each other, figure out one of the two. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, clap. Put the other thumb on top. So how does that feel? Awkward, weird. Sometimes if you're in a room with a big group of people, you actually audibly hear people go, ooh. Because it feels a little bit different. It feels a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit unusual. And that's sometimes what innovation feels like too. When we try new things and when we do things differently, it can feel a little bit weird and a little bit uncomfortable. And the purpose of that is kind of to illustrate that as we move forward with the rubric and we start to incorporate some of these new ideas into our teaching and use technology in our teaching, it's going to feel a little bit different. It's going to feel a little bit unusual and a little bit weird. And that's okay. So just remember that as you're putting things into your class, as you're incorporating the rubric, as you're trying new things, that it's okay to have the other thumb on top a little bit. So anyway, there you go, Dipali.
Thank you very much. Great exercise. And we know a lot of different exercises, about innovation and how, we try to do something different and how challenging everything is at the process, but we can do it together, right? Thank you. So go ahead, Michael, with your presentation.
So I'm Michael Hill. I'm adjunct faculty here at American River College, and I also am in the School of Education at UC Davis, and teach a few other places too, mostly fully online. And really so that I don't use up a whole lot of time after the activity, what I really wanted to stress with all of you is that the OEI rubric actually is a good thing, and it's good not only for us, but it's good for our students too. I think that sometimes when we see this new checklist of things that we have to do, and I know that we felt it when we started to talk about the regular effective contact and things like that, when we see this list of things that we need to do, that we need to incorporate in our class, our first response may be, well, that's more work. And that's really, yeah, there is a little bit more work up front. But doing this additional work lets us focus when we're actually teaching our classes, whether it's online or in a blended environment. It actually lets us focus on what we came to do, which is teach our classes, the content that we're teaching, rather than focusing on helping students with the technology or figuring out how to, find things in the class or setting expectations. The more of that we can do up front, and the more of that we can design into our course using a tool like the rubric, the better off our students are, because then they can focus on what they're supposed to be learning and not focus on learning a new class and the processes for that class and the way that class works every 16 weeks. Because a lot of the time our students spend at the very beginning of the semester is figuring our class out. And the more we can make our classes work in similar ways, the more we can make expectations for what it means to be an online student the same, and the more we can be consistent with our organization, consistent with our communication, the better off our students are going to be, and the more they can focus on what they're here to do, which is learn, and we can focus on the content that we're here to teach, which is why we all came in the first place. So anyway, I'm going to hand it over to Tim, but that's really the main point in all of the stuff that I had. Our LMS is our classroom. It's For those of us that teach online, it's our environment. For those of us that are teaching in a blended format, it's an extension of our environment. We want to make it the best possible environment we can for our students. And once we get used to this work, then it'll just be normal.
Thank you, Michael. We can take one question. If you have any question for Michael, and everybody's email address, you can always get in touch with them. Thank you, Michael. Yes, team. So we have about what, 10 minutes? Yeah. We have 10 minutes.
Okay, keep it quick. My name's Tim Kovar. I'm an adjunct professor here at American River College and over at Sierra College. Next slide, please. One of the things that the OEI rubric sort of reminded me of is Aristotle's triptych, which is Aristotle's a brilliant thinker. And one of the similarities between, or dissimilarities between Aristotle and myself, not only is his intellect, but he's got more hair than I have. So anyway, the triptych is tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. And that is still holding true for today. Go ahead and change the slide, please. Change it again. Okay, so in the OEI rubrics, paragraphs A1 through 3 is basically talking about how to, is telling them what you're going to tell them. And so here is a page out of one of my courses, and it's got the header, and it simply is telling them what we're going to tell them. So this is an introductory, this is the first page in this particular module, and I'm going through simply an outline of what they're going to go through in this particular module. Change the page, please. And this is developed in course navigation. Once again, change the page. So now looking at it from the module level, and I'm more of a module thinker than a page thinker. A module is a great way to organize your pages within your course. And so this is the module. It's got the introduction header, as you can see at the top. And this is simply a way, if a student looks at the module, they're able to quickly assess what we're going to go through in the module, and it goes through the learning outcomes and what the course outcomes, the particular module outcomes are, comes into what the activities of the particular module are, and all the way through what kind of participation I'm expecting out of them, and lastly the summary, which is telling them what you told them. So the next slide is the actual content. This is what we're telling them they're going to learn. We're actually getting into the discussion. And one of the things that I like is for online is that often students will forget to reply to other students in the discussions, and here it is the last day before the grades are due, and you get all these hastily replies. So what I have done is I've set it up in the module. When they click the next page, it's reminding them early in the week to reply to their students. Go ahead and click the page twice. This is again the body of the module, telling them what we told them. And then the last one is simply the conclusion of telling them the module wrap-up. A quick summary of what it is. So it's Aristotle's triptych, basically done on an online fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Question for Tim? We can take one more question. Audience. Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much. It's okay. Leslie.
I'm Leslie Reeves. I'll split the 5 minutes with you. All right. So I have been an adjunct professor here at American River College in Business and Computer Science since 2005, teaching Microsoft applications and web publishing. But I want to point out the other part of my bio, what I've been doing the last 2 semesters, is creating online courses for our fire technology program. And I have been an instructional designer in this role. And what I've created, and using some textbooks that were provided, these turnkey courses. Now, I'm not a subject matter expert, so I really focused on the mechanics. Okay, next slide. So these philosophies of mine drove me to embrace the Online Education Initiative rubric. And so I'm just going to move right to that part. Next one. Thank you. Okay, so I've really focused on the mechanics, and here's the things that struck me the most. As far as content presentation, that's section A, unit level chunking, structuring, and sequencing. I like the clarity for the students. I think it's so important that mastering this section of the rubric it really brings the clarity. Also, consistency within modules allows the students to predict and plan their time for the course. And I think that's so important. The embedding resources. This includes linking to outside resources, explicit instructions, and assignments, and quizzes, and discussions, so students don't have to go hunting. Let's say if it's only listed in the syllabus, they might have to click around, but if you have the resource right where it is needed for the student, it just streamlines it for them, and it makes it so much easier. Now, as far as interaction goes, section B, I think a strong communication plan, and that's, you need a strong communication plan in the syllabus, but also in each assignment or discussion or quiz, communicate how they will be assessed and where they can find feedback, have links to all those outside sources. I think it's important to have instructor contact information throughout the course, which a lot of people said this is so redundant, but I think it's necessary. I think this redundancy is important so that the information is always right there where the students need it. Okay, I think, yeah, there we go, next slide. Okay, an assessment, I think the multiple type of assessments are so important. Low stakes weekly assessments to align with the learning outcomes for that week. And then the students could pick one. Let's say it could include a multiple choice quiz, a short writing essay about the material, an audio comment from a student answering some questions. So all this would allow students to express themselves about that weekly material in a way that they're comfortable with. And of course that has to do with accessibility and universal design. And then of course good rubrics, and you were talking about good rubrics. They're good mostly for summative assessments, but they're good for formative. Important for the students to see what the different standards are for their assignments. And then, of course, last but not least, accessibility, and I think that we all need to be mindful of creating good accessibility in our courses with our documents, but also use the tools in Canvas. And now, my 2.5 minutes are up. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
You got it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Specker, and click it. Yeah, and you can just click through that too. It's okay, yeah. Okay, so I teach hybrid courses with ESL students, which I think is the best of both worlds. And the OEI Rubric was something that really helped me with Canvas. Moving from D2L, where I was working really on pages and links to different pages, and then moving into the modules, you know, kind of like Joe has said, it was a bit of a, this is still kind of a challenge. I'm still working on it, honestly. But the rubric has kind of helped me improve my class as I'm working with my students to kind of go through these modules. And I'm finding that the modules are actually more useful in the Canvas and what Canvas can and can't do. So one of the ways, you know, just click through that one. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of just said that one. Go again. Next, last one. Yeah. Okay. So here I set it up to lock the order of the assignments. And that's what I found really helps with my students is that, you know, I tell them what to do, right? And then I tell them why they're doing what they're doing. And then I help them go through their assignments. I give them the assignment to work in their book. And then they'll have like a little homework check quiz. And then once they do the quiz, then the rest of the module is kind of released so then they can see the answers to those quizzes, and that's where they can get the feedback at home. And then when they come to class, then we can ask questions about what they got right or wrong. And so I'm finding this useful. I did have to call the help desk, where they're very, very nice people. And they helped me figure this out again. And so the module part is actually helping me help my students and guiding them through. And kind of what Leslie was saying is like putting things all in one place so they don't have to click all over the place. It's all kind of right there for them. And so the rubric is helping me make that a better place for my students when they're online. And then when we come to the classroom, it's also kind of made me think about best practices where in the class I tell, you know, it's just reminded me, I have to tell them, like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? What did you get out of it? But the rubric helped me there, too. So in the end, I think I think it was a good job. And I think we all had a good time this last semester. So we learned a lot from each other.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We are collecting feedback for OEI and Canvas. Yes, we have a question.
Yeah, so I would really like your feedback on the rubric, definitely. We did a major redesign of it, as you probably know, last November, and so we'll be looking at it again probably this fall. Just maybe not as big of a change, but minor tweaks always. And then my question was, for those of you that mentioned teaching hybrid, you kind of touched on this, but did you find yourself redesigning the face-to-face portion of your class at all based on anything in the rubric, or was it strictly just applied to the online portion of your hybrid course?
I don't think for the face-to-face part, I'll let you know in December.
So we have a lot of feedbacks. This was conducted by Marsha and myself throughout the semester. So we had a lot of fun, a lot of challenges, and we have a lot of feedback. And in audience, if you have some suggestions, tips, please keep sending it to us, right? And their email addresses, and we have a lot of feedback for you. But thank you very much. I wanted to summarize, the session. Thank you for hosting, Greg and Michael on the tech side, and ITC, and all the colleges in Los Rios. So summary, Innovate is all about trying different things, making things happen, doing things together, and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for attending. We now have lunch starting in about 10 minutes. Lunch does include some prizes, so make sure you've got your raffle tickets ready. Thank you.